Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Brandon, and welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find the latest album reviews. You can find local and non-local band interviews, as well as you can find live episodes, which we do at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, give or take. Obviously, it takes a few minutes to set up and stuff. But I have a little bit of news. If you're going to be at the Camden Warp Tour date, which is I believe July 8th, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Make sure you come say what's up to us. We're gonna be at the Warp Tour Day, and we're super excited to go. I think I don't know if it's my third year already, but I'm super excited to go yet again. But make sure you say what's up. Also, make sure to subscribe and like these videos. Again, it helps out our channel tremendously. Thank you for giving us a good review or a good amount of views and likes on our previous two, which were Hail the Sun and I See Stars. But thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. Also, I'm kind of getting away from myself here, so let's get it back to the album review. Tonight we'll be doing The Browning and their new album Isolation, which comes out. I think it comes out this Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it comes out this Friday, uh, June 24th. I got it right. But I've been listening to the singles for this album, and I figured, might as well do a review on it. I got it a little bit early, so I wanted to check it out. For those of you who don't know, The Browning, this is their third studio album. They had two previous albums, one being Burn This World, and the second being Hypernova. So if you haven't checked out those two records, make sure to check them out. But anyway, this is their third studio attempt, and it features 12 tracks. And let's get right into it. So the first track is called Cynica, as you can tell because I put all the track listing names on there. But this is probably the best opener track on the record. Obviously, I just said it, but this track is probably one of the best tracks and one of my favorite tracks off the record. It just immediately hits you with that EDM and like that deathcore style, metalcore kind of breakdown stuff. Um, it's a really heavy track, and then I think towards the end, maybe like a minute or like 50 seconds into the end, um, they do like a breakdown. And they kind of slow it down, which is sick. I don't know. I don't really listen to a lot of deathcore. Um, I don't know why. I just haven't really got into it. So if you got any suggestions for deathcore, put them in the description. I'll make sure to check them out. But again, I'm getting a little away from myself. But that's definitely one of my favorite tracks off this record. We'll move on to the second one, Pure Evil. They did a music video for this one, and I think this was the first single that they released off this album. It was okay. Uh, it's obviously if you've been listening to the Browning for quite some time, their sound is relatively the same. They kind of remind me of a harder version of Attack Attack without any cleans. I'm sure they get that a lot, but that's what I attribute it to when I've been listening to these tracks because I hadn't really listened to the Browning up until this point in this album, so might have to go back and listen to some of their stuff. Maybe they've kind of separated themselves. But anyway, Pure Evil was their first single, I believe, and it was pretty okay. I'm not a really huge fan of it. I wouldn't say it's one of the worst tracks off the record, but it definitely is like in that okay kind of state. Track number 3, Isolation, is another really good one. I love the like synth and the EDM in this track, especially as well as obviously the guitar work isn't too complicated, but it kind of adds to the whole EDM vibe to the tracks. And the screamer is really excellent in this track as well. He's a really solid vocalist, definitely in this album, and I definitely liked how his voice sounded, like his scream sounded in this whole record. He did some like nice lows, and he didn't get really into the high range, but he did some really nice mids. I really think his vocals shine in the lower growls and stuff like that. So, really awesome track. Like definitely like track number 3, one of my favorites off the record. Track number 4 is Dragon. This was also a single, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it actually was a single. I think it was their second single, and it was okay as well. I liked it I don't know if I liked it better than Pure Evil. I definitely like Pure Evil a little bit more than Dragon. It's a little bit slower at the beginning. You know, it starts off really slow with a nice EDM kind of like synth vibe to it, and then kind of picks up towards the end, um, which is great. But again, I wasn't a real huge fan of it. Listening to that one. Um, Track number 5, Fallout, is another kind of one that I glazed over. I wasn't too big of a fan of it. I definitely have to say it's one of the least favorite tracks that I liked on the record. I can speak English, um, but that one, I don't know, it just didn't really get me. Track number 6, however, is an awesome track. Just like Cynica and Isolation, those two tracks hit hard, and this one is no different. Definitely like Vortex. Again, I love the mix of EDM and those really like brutal guitar parts with the bass and the drums and the vocals. It just makes this track really heavy, brutal, really brutal. Probably I don't know if it would be one of the heavier tracks off the record, but definitely one of my favorites. Track number 7, Spineless, was also another good one. It's not in my favorites, but it again I don't really have anything bad to say about it. It was a solid track. Give that one a listen as well. But again, you'll probably just listen all the way through if you like this band. So Spineless was kind of like in the okay range. Again, the EDM's really nice with the synth, and it's just an interesting track. It's another really good one as well. Track number 8, Hex, is definitely one of my least favorite, along with Phantom Dancer. So I'll kind of put those two together. Um, they were just lackluster to me. I don't know. It just didn't really hit me as much as the rest of the tracks. Maybe because they're just a little bit slower, in terms of just how the synths sound and just the guitar work and stuff like that. It just really didn't get my vibes going and stuff. Um, those two tracks probably were my least favorite off the record for sure. But again, you can if you have a different opinion, make sure to leave in the comments. I make sure to check them out. So, um, definitely these 8 and 9, Hex and Phantom Sleeper, are my two least favorite off this record for sure. It's just something about like the punch of the tracks. They just didn't feel. I don't know. They just didn't feel real heavy. I mean, they obviously were heavy, but they just didn't. Just I don't know. Just something about it just didn't really get my gears going. So, um, we'll move on to track number 10, Cryosleep. This one is a super solid track. It's probably one of my favorites as well. Um, Super heavy track. I love the synth and the EDM parts in this track as well. I know I've mentioned that a lot, but obviously they derive a lot of their sound from deathcore, metalcore, and a lot of electronic music. So that's heavily utilized in this album. So if you don't like a mix of those two, then this album isn't for you. Anyway, getting back to Cryosleep, definitely one of my favorites off the record. Just it's got this super heavy, it's got super heavy riffage plus the awesome synth and the EDM parts. Another great track. Track number 11, I think this was their third single, Disconnect, and it features Frankie Palmieri from Amir, as we all know. He actually sounded really good in this track, and I'm not a fan of Amir. Uh, just I just never really got into him. They're just not my thing. If you like them, then you'll definitely like this track. He does a little bit of rapping parts in the verse, and then obviously he does some screams. I think towards like the minute mark. I'm not entirely sure, but he's a great feature in this track, and again, this was probably my favorite track of the singles, and probably one of my favorite tracks off the record as a whole. Um, Frankie just adds that nice kind of rap bit to it, and then again with the EDM parts, and just it's got an awesome breakdown and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed this track. I think they utilized Frankie very well in this track, like I mentioned earlier. Um, Definitely one of my favorites. And lastly, Pathologic. Great way to end off the rest of the album. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it's just a great way that they ended off the album. It goes into like kind of a slow breakdown towards the end, and then it kind of fizzles out with some like synth parts, some EDM parts at the end. So, um, plenty of EDM parts, plenty of synth, plenty of heavy riffage in this album. The one thing, or there's quite a few things, but the one thing that I can stress the most about this record that I didn't like was that I listened to it quite a few times, and it just seemed to me like the tracks just mixed together. Like it sounded like one giant long track. Um, there's just no, didn't feel like there was any diversity in this record. Obviously, I know they're deathcore, and you know the common joke is that they only use the first and zero fret. So, but I don't know. It just seemed like it was just one long track. Like if you just played me the album, I wouldn't be able to tell if like where the track stopped and started. It just seemed like just one giant EDM heavy album. It just didn't seem like there was any breaks. There wasn't anything like new tried. There wasn't anything new to be tried in this record. It just seems like kind of a generic record. I mean, obviously, if you like the heavy aspects with EDM, heavy guitars, heavy all that stuff, instrumentals, along with EDM, you'll like this record. Again, if you like Attack Attack without clean vocals, you'll like this album. But just to me, it just seemed really repetitive. There just wasn't any structure to this tracks. Um, they just seemed to flow into each other, and there just wasn't a diversity. Obviously, they use different synth patches, but just overall, the feelings that I got from this album just didn't really jive well. Like I liked it. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I'm doing a review on it because I liked it, but just from a fan standpoint, I just feel like that the whole album just seemed like one giant track. Um, and the good things that I can say about this record is there are some really solid tracks, like I mentioned earlier. My favorites being Cynica, Isolation, Vortex, and Cryosleep, and Disconnect. Those are being my favorite tracks off the record. But there was a lot of filler. I feel like there was a lot of filler tracks. Like there again, I'm getting back to the whole thing with, it sounds like one thing, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it just seemed like some really nice gem tracks, and then there just seemed like filler content. And I'm not saying anything about getting bad against the Browning. I've never met them. They seem like nice dudes, but it just seems like to me that there was like, it just seems like the tracks were meant for a live aspect, which is cool, and I assume that they want you to come out and see them live playing it, but there just isn't any creative flow to me. Like obviously the EDM's really nice, and that takes time, and that does take creativity. I'm not knocking that. It just seemed like it just didn't it seemed bland to me. It just didn't seem like anything interesting that I didn't already hear from another band. Like I keep referencing Attack Attack. It just seemed like something that's not new. And there's nothing wrong with being generic. If you want it to be generic, then that's completely fine with you. But to me, this album just lacks from being creative. I like what they do. I like what the Browning does. I'm not trying to take a shit on the Browning. No pun intended. But they are a great band, but there's just no creativity. And for the next record, I'd like to see them put a little bit more thoughts into the riff. I mean, I don't care if they take a little bit longer to make a record. I'd rather have something that they're really proud of, and that, obviously shows off their creativity, because I'm sure that this band is very talented, and I would just hate for them to like disappear out into the nowhere. So, I probably give this album I probably give it a 7 out of 10. I would give it a listen. Would I listen to it again? That's debatable. I mean, there are some tracks like I mentioned, Cynica, Isolation, Vortex, Cryosleep, and Disconnect. Those were the 5 tracks that I liked. But again, it just seemed like there were some diamonds in a lot of rough dirt. And I just feel like if they put a lot more creative energy into their next record, they'll definitely keep me on board as a fan. But let me know what you think in the comments if you listen to the Browning, or if this is, your first encounter with them. I've known about him for a while, but I never really gave him a chance. So I figured, give this new album a listen. I did listen to the singles, and I was pretty excited based off the singles. But again, I wanted to kind of hear the whole thing. And yeah, just let me know in the comments what you thought about it if you've listened to it. I know it comes out on Friday, so I don't know if you guys picked it up or have listened to it on like either Spotify, iTunes, whatever. Um, Also, make sure to let me know if you want me to do another album. Just let me know in the comments. I'm open to pretty much anything. Nick might have to take you up on country because I am personally not a fan of country. No offense to you, Nick, but you understand my thoughts on that. And if you like what I did, make sure you hit that thumbs up and please make sure to subscribe. I know I said it earlier, but I can't stress it enough. It really helps our channel, and you don't know how much time and effort that we put into these videos. It really helps grow us, and hopefully we can find cool people like yourself. Again, thank you for checking out my video. If you like what we do, just browse around the channel. We'd love to see you on the live episodes as well. And yeah, that's it. So I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.